gets preserved so long as it is in practice, and all the rituals, actions and customs are nothing but wisdom in motion. The more research takes place into a culture and publish, newer are the avenues through which the cultural traditions of the region gets reaffirmed and propagated. This is one of the many reasons why the Sahitya Akademi instituted this fellowship. And many great scholars from different countries have been conferred this fellowship, such as Miss Mami Yamada, who is a great painter and a scholar, and also studied well about our Kerala culture and traditions. She is from Japan. And also Miss Mihoko Hiroko, she is also from Japan. Professor Sena K. Bandaranaike from Sri Lanka. Dr. Itmar Theodore from Israel. Professor Jiang Chengku from China, who is a very well-known Hindi scholar. These are to name a few. And this fellowship is not merely to benefit the writers and the scholars from Asian countries, but also recognizing for rich contributions they have already made to their disciplines of choice. And we are happy to present the fellowship to Miss Nalina Gopal. And I'll just briefly introduce her. Ms. Nalina Gopal is a lead curator at the Indian Heritage Center, a museum managed by the National Heritage Board of Singapore, and her recent publication include Singapore Indian Heritage, a seminal book on Singapore's Indian history and heritage as featured at the Indian Heritage Center, for which she has authored chapters and descriptions for the center's collection, ranging from important South and Southeast Asian antiquities and of the objects and textiles pertinent to the roots of Indian communities in Singapore and Southeast Asia. Ms. Nalina has also been published in prestigious journals as well as Singapore's museum and library publications. Currently she is assistant editor for From the Coromandel Coast to the Straits, a publication to be launched in 2019. And in 2018, Nalina was the recipient of the Julia O Fellowship for Continuous Learning. So with these few words, I welcome Nalina Gopalji. And before I ask her to say a few words, there was some speaking. Okay, before that, I think we should present her the fellowship and last one.
Firstly, I must place on record my gratitude to the Sahitya Akademi for awarding me this fellowship. It is even more exciting for me to receive this fellowship because Dr. Ananda Coomaraswamy is such an important scholar and art historian of South and Southeast Asian art that most curators of South Asian art aspire to. So thank you once again for this immense honor. I will be speaking about Southeast Asia's Indian heritage. It is a subject that has been very close to the heart for the last decade, and I hope to do it justice this evening. Please feel free to ask me questions at the end of the session. I've been told I have about 25 minutes. I will try to keep your time, and if not, I will ask Sneha to make me the task. So without further ado, in 1927, during his visit to Southeast Asia, the Nobel laureate Gurudev Rabindra observed, "I see India everywhere, but I don't recognize it." that sums up the indelible mark centuries of interactions with South Asia have left in the Southeast Asian region. It is important to remember that the cultural identity of Southeast Asia is firmly rooted in the region, but that years of contact with the neighboring civilizations have left deep imprints. Hinduism and Buddhism found their way into Southeast Asia via travelers, monks, and merchants. Islam and Christianity too took roots via South Asia to Southeast Asia. The vast remains of stone sculpture and architecture from early Southeast Asian kingdoms stand testimony to the adaptation of Indian religions by local rulers. Some early Hindu-Buddhist cultural centers in Southeast and East Asia included Pew, Funan, Zenla, Dwaravati, Champa, Central Java, Angkor, Majapahit, Srivijaya, and Kedah. Extensive archaeological remains and inscriptions in Southeast Asia, dating from as early as the 2nd and 3rd century of the Common Era to the end of the 14th century, bear testimony to the presence of Indian religions and the adaptation by local rulers, as well as the operations of trading networks. Literary traditions too were adapted and internalized, and the popularity of the Ramayana and the Mahabharata is immeasurable in the region. This context of early interactions between the two regions form an important preamble to the modern dispersion of South Asian diasporas to the Southeast Asian region. Singapore's role in the trading networks of the past, the parallelism of the migrant narratives of Indians in Singapore with others in Southeast Asia, and the shared histories of these communities will be discussed this evening. Singapura or Temasek was an important trading port, integral in the 14th century to the trading network existent in the region. Archaeological finds at Bukit Larangan or Fort Canning, as it is more popularly known within the boundaries of Old Singapore, include a gold armlet together with other pieces of Majapahit gold jewellery. The armlet is decorated with an embossed kala motif, which we in South Asia know as the Kirti Mukha. The advanced technique and design of the armlet have led scholars to conclude that it has the appearance of an Indian ornament. Furthermore, archaeological surveys conducted since 1984 by Professor John Nixick and his team at sites such as the Fort Canning, the New Parliament Complex, the Old Parliament House, Colombo Court, and Empress Place have yielded thousands of artifacts, predominantly dating between 1300 and 1600. These artifacts included Chinese and local or Malay-style pottery, with small quantities of glass, gold, copper, lead, and tree-resin materials. Although various types of industries were operating in Singapore then, including gold, copper, bronze, glass recycling, and pottery making. Several Chinese jars called mercury jars, dating to the 14th century, were excavated at the Old Parliament House site, suggestive of early industrial activity. Of interest to us is a carnelian bead and a glass, or perhaps a lark bangle fragment, possibly originating in India, dated to the late 13th century, were found at Fort Canning, pushing back Singapore's early contact with India to about the late 13th century. Due to the situation along important trade routes connecting the subcontinent and China, parts of Southeast Asia were introduced to India's major religions, Hinduism and Buddhism. Synchronous was the steady influx of Indian sculptural styles and artistic traditions. Some of the oldest material remains suggestive of Indian contact are in the form of epigraphic, sculptural, and architectural installations across Southeast Asia. Using the illustrative example of Vishnu worship in Southeast Asia, the following paragraphs provide historical evidence of the adaptation and appeal of Hindu religions in Southeast Asia. Vishnu and his avatars or incarnations frequently appear in the epigraphic and archaeological evidences of Southeast Asia. The earliest known Southeast Asian Sanskrit inscription from Bhutan in Vietnam, dating to the 3rd century CE, relates to the verses of the Valmiki Ramayana. A 5th to 6th century CE Sanskrit inscription at Sahitya in Thailand uses the term Vaishnavasura or Vaishnava hero in conjunction with the names Rama and Lakshmana. Other 7th century CE inscriptions from Cambodia and Vietnam make further allusions to Indian texts and reveal knowledge of the Ramayana and Mahabharata. The West Javan Arathon rock inscription dating to the 5th century CE presents an early mention of Vishnu and his association with kingship. It speaks of Purnavarman, the king of Tarumanagara, and compares his footprints to Vishnupada. Written in the Pallava Grantha script, the inscription is indicative of early interactions, perhaps with southern India. Another 5th century CE inscription from Prasat Pram Lovan or Gota, now in Vietnam, makes reference to a Kaundinya prince, Gunavarman, who consecrated a sanctuary containing Vishnupada. Archaeologists are of the view that the Vishnupada in the C. Arathon inscription marks a military conquest, while the inscription by Prince Gunavarman denotes a peaceful territorial possession. References to the construction of Vishnu Grihas to accommodate Vaishnavas and the installation of Vishnu images are also found in the 7th century CE Angkor Gorai inscription from the kingdom of Funan. Furthermore, throughout Southeast Asia, archaeological finds suggest that the images of Vishnu and other Hindu deities were possibly produced from around the 5th century CE. Early Southeast Asian visual representations display strong stylistic connections with India in their developmental phase. However, art historians reason that Southeast Asia gradually developed its own unique style. The earliest and most commonly found Vishnu is the four-armed Vishnu with cylindrical headgear dating to about the 5th to the 7th century CE. The headgear takes after the Kirita Mukta or jeweled crown adorning Vishnu sculptures of the Gupta and later the Pallava periods in India. In this resplendent form, Vishnu has a royal persona. Other early forms of Vishnu and related images include Vishnu reclining on the serpent Ananda in his meditative state of creation, the goddess of prosperity and wealth Shri, as well as images from the Dashavatara. Temple reliefs were also devoted to the particular episodes of Ramayana, Mahabharata and Krishna Leela. Temples dedicated to Brahma, Vishnu and Shiva as the Trimurti were established in places like Cambodia, Java and Bali. For instance, the 9th century CE temples in Prambanan in Java are characterized by the placement of Ramayana reliefs surrounding sanctums of Brahma and Shiva. Harihara appears in Southeast Asian imagery from as early as the 6th century CE, with Vishnu as the embodiment of powers of creation and protection, and Shiva as the quintessential ascetic, both qualities desired by the ruling class. Buddhism was diverse in its influence in Southeast Asia. Buddhist traditions were established in the area, and these included a profound Theravada tradition amongst strains of the Mahayana and Tantric traditions. The Buddha and Buddhist deities are well represented across Peninsular and mainland Southeast Asia, with idioms of the Gupta, Amaravati, Pala and Anuradhapura schools having had deep impact on the Buddhist art of the region. Srivijaya, a powerful maritime kingdom, was influenced by the Mahayana school of Buddhist art emerging out of northern India. Buddhism has also had a lasting impact on the religio-social culture of Southeast Asia, with it being a predominant religion in countries such as Thailand and Myanmar. Their architecture and sculptural traditions also stand testimony to the long-standing sway of Indian Buddhism. Trading networks initiated by South Asian Islamic communities in the Indian Ocean and Southeast Asian region have a long and uninterrupted history. Trading settlements in Southeast Asia were occupied by Arab, Gujarati and South Indian traders from as early as the late 13th century and thereafter. Scholars have suggested that Arab trading groups also traveled to Southeast Asia from Sri Lanka, Gujarat, the Coromandel and the Malabar Coast, bringing with them their brand of religion and cultural influence. Early Christian influences arrived in Southeast Asia via Central and South Asia in the 7th century CE, although a rising settlement left no impact. that was lasting at that time. However, there was a revival in the influence of Christianity with the spread of European imperialist networks across Asia in the 16th and 17th centuries, and important amongst these was the Portuguese settlements originating in Goa, reaching Malacca and Macau in the east. Later, missionaries were sent from India even to Singapore during the 19th and the early 20th centuries to serve the educational and religious needs of the Christian communities there. Trade in Indian textiles through land and sea routes can be traced as early as the 1st century CE. India, renowned for its painted and dyed textiles, was engaged in production activities and trade along the Gujarat, Coromandel and Bengal coasts. Trading companies such as the East India Company of the British and the Dutch East India Company acquired Indian textiles in exchange for silver from Europe and Japan and traded them for spices cultivated in Southeast Asia. These spices and textiles were then sold in Europe and the Americas. Fortified settlements of Tamil merchants already existed in places like the port of Tapuapa in the Isthmus of Kra in the late 9th century. Tapuapa was an important point in the Malay Peninsula, known in Tamil sources as Tapkolam. The Tapuapa inscription in the collection of the National Museum of Thalang in Phuket makes reference to this presence. The Barus inscription of 1088 with details of the Aivoli Guild also illustrates the flourishing money gramam or merchant guilds of Tamil traders during the Srivijaya period. Sea-born Gujarati traders played a role in connecting the trading ports of West and Southeast Asia, laying the foundation for cross-regional trade before the advent of colonial companies. Through the curatorial device of juxtaposition, carefully installed displays at the museum that I work at, the Indian Heritage Center, suggest the exchange of ideas in the creation of art and sculpture, bringing together South and Southeast Asian models of the headed Buddha, the influence of Indian artistic traditions on the development of Japanese Buddhist art, but with an emphasis on the development of a unique Southeast Asian model is put forward. In the collection of the center is a remarkable Japanese headed Buddha made of andesite, dating to the 8th or 9th century CE from the Shailendra dynasty period. The conspicuous base displayed as seen above is an attestation to its excellent provenance, having been mounted by the European collector Karl Ernsthaus, who had acquired the sculpture in the early 20th century for his house museum. This superbly carved head evinces all the prescribed physical attributes or Mahapurusha Lakshana of the Buddha, a cranial bump or the Ushnisha emerging from atop the head signifying enlightenment, tightly arranged snail shell curves suggestive of the closely shorn hair of a tonsured man, a circular dot or urna at the center of the forehead denoting his vision into the celestial world, and elongated earlobes suggesting the past use of heavy ornaments that were abandoned when the Buddha gave up his regal life and went in search of enlightenment. Juxtaposed together with this is a headed Buddha dating to the 5th century CE or the Gupta period of the Mathura school, made in red sandstone, exhibiting perfect symmetry and balance of the Gupta prototypes. The perfected art of the Gupta school had an influence on the sculptural traditions of several other kingdoms within and outside India. The technique of juxtaposition was also used to create a Shaivite pantheon display showing South and Southeast Asian sculpture of Shaivite Hindu deities and even sages of popular appeal in both regions. The pot-bellied sculpture of Agastya, a Shaivite saint depicted with beard and jatamara or matted hair, is seen holding a kundika or water pot and a akshamala or prayer beads, which could have been what he was holding in his right hand, which is now damaged. In Hindu tradition, Agastya is one of the Saptarishi or 7 Vedic seers and one of the 8 disciples of the Hindu deity Shiva. Agastya is also venerated in South India as the author of Agatyam, a seminal text on Tamil grammar. In Indonesia, Agastya is held as the harbinger of Indian culture and Hinduism from South India to Java. Early Khmer representations of a Mukhalinga or Shiva as Mukhalinga often adopt the abstract form of the linga and an iconic sculptural representation. Some lingas, such as the sculpture on display at the museum, are carved with the mukha or the face. The mukha linga is carved in 3 parts as a representation of the Trimurti, which is a very unique feature of that region, with the square base symbolizing Brahma, the commander of the 4 cardinal directions, the octagonal shaft symbolizing Vishnu as the Chakravartin, commander of the 8 cardinal and sub-cardinal directions, and the cylindrical bulbous head symbolizing Shiva, the divine personification of cosmic infinity in phallic form. In conclusion, from the earliest times, Indians have traded across the Indian Ocean and over the Asian landmass. This has provided the setting for movement and settlement in lands beyond India well before the period of European colonial intervention. Pre-colonial sojourns have been further cemented by lasting migrations from the subcontinent to different parts of Southeast Asia. Indian maritime communities such as the Chuliyas or the Choliyas of the South Coromandel coast and Goras of Gujarat continue to be part of the diasporas in Southeast Asia, having links with the long-standing cultural heritage of the regions. In this context, post-colonial identities emerged having common socio-religious backgrounds, breeding mutual appreciation and understanding. The narration of modern South Asian migration to Southeast Asia is incomplete without establishing this vibrant history and past. The Indian Heritage Center's collection and displays were constructed acknowledging this important preface to the Singapore Indian experience, and I thought it would be a good note for me to start off the series of lectures with. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nalina, for such an interesting and enlightening discourse. We have some 10 minutes if the audience wants to interact with Ms. Nalina. Have any questions, queries, or observations? Okay. So,
सिंगापुर आप रहती हैं, मुझे लगता है कि थोड़ा सा मेरा एक्सपीरियंस जो है आपको मेरे साथ शेयर करना चाहता हूँ। जिस जगह पर आप काम कर रही हैं वहाँ आप जैसे एंटर होते हैं तो मुझे लगता है कि हमें लक्ष्मी नारायण मंदिर मिलता है, गुरुद्वारा मिलता है और आपका सेंटर मिलता है। तो वहाँ बिल्कुल अभी जैसे पिछले दिनों दिवाली की, मुझे लगता है कि इतना अर्ली सेलिब्रेशन इंडिया में भी कहीं शुरू नहीं होता है जितना
2 महीने पहले
शुरू होता है। और वो बिल्कुल फुल ऑफ लाइट्स और इतना मतलब लगता है कि दिवाली नहीं लाइट बनाना चाहिए कई बार नहीं। तो मुझे लगता है कि आप म्यूजियम में अभी आपके सामने कैरियर है, म्यूजियम में वहाँ मैं देखता हूँ कि बहुत सारे लेखक लोग जाते हैं, कुछ घूमने जाते हैं, कुछ दूसरी तरह से आते हैं। तो आप कोई ऐसा प्रोग्राम अगर शुरू करने की स्थिति में हों कि जो लोग वहाँ पर घूमने जाए तो वहाँ के जो इंडियंस रहने वाले हैं, क्योंकि वहाँ तीसरी भाषा तमिल है जो
ऑफिशियल लैंग्वेज है।
और जब आप उस ट्रेन MRT से गुजरते हैं, जब आप ट्रेन में जाते हैं तो जो अनाउंसमेंट होते हैं वो तमिल में भी होते हैं सीरिया। तो वहाँ इंडिया को इतनी ज़्यादा सहूलियत मिलती है। तो मुझे लगता है कि आप स्ट्रीट्स के माध्यम से और दूसरी जो हमारी पुरानी इतनी सारी विरासत है उसके माध्यम से अपने वहाँ की जो कल्चर है उसको पीछे बना सकते हैं। मुझे लगता है कि आप ये काम करेंगे।
Thank you for the suggestion. Actually पिछले साल हमने नेशनल म्यूजियम के साथ कोलैबोरेशन की थी और एक एग्जीबिशन वहाँ पे इंस्टॉल किया था, सिम्बल्स एंड स्क्रिप्ट्स द लैंग्वेज ऑफ क्राफ्ट। और उसके दौरान हम वहाँ पे कैलीग्राफर्स भी लाए थे मगर लेखक तो नहीं लाए थे। दूसरी बार हम देखेंगे कि क्या करें। अगले साल सिंगापुर का बाइसेंटेनियल ईयर है, इट्स 200 years since the founding of modern Singapore. सो हम उसके लिए तमिल के ऊपर एक एग्जीबिशन करने वाले हैं और कॉन्फ्रेंस भी होगा। तो तब हम ज़रूर कोशिश करेंगे कि जो लेखक आए हैं साउथ ईस्ट एशिया में और सिंगापुर में पिछले 200 साल से या उससे भी पहले, अगर उनकी कोई लिखावट हो तो उसको हम फीचर करें और अगर वो वहाँ पे हैं तो भी बुलाएँ और इनसे मिलाने की कोई लेक्चर कुछ ऑर्गेनाइज करें। थैंक यू।
Thank you. Can you tell me what happened to the local Hindu communities based in Southeast Asia, like in Angkor Wat, which was a Hindu temple? Did they convert to Buddhism?
In Cambodia, I should think that there's more Buddhism today than there is Hinduism. But in
There are no Hindus left?
No. But if you see places like Bali, for instance, there is still a thriving Hindu community in Bali or even parts of Java. Maybe of interest, in Malacca, there's a very small community called the Chitti Malacca. They are descendants of Indian traders who settled about 400 to 500 years ago in Malacca, and they married local women. And they remain Hindu in majority even today, even though they don't speak likely Tamil or any of the other languages that they would have originally spoken. They speak Malay entirely. So there are in pockets across Southeast Asia some Hindu communities, but not the way, because in those days it was very much surviving because of political franchise and support. It was what the rulers wanted to adopt to further enhance their power. When that faded with time, the influence has also faded, but that's not the case with Buddhism in some ways.
मैडम, आपको बहुत धन्यवाद है। 2 साल पहले भारत सरकार के द्वारा कंबोडिया, लाओस और वियतनाम में जो गेस्ट टीचर भेजे गए थे, उसमें मेरा नाम था। उसमें बहुत सारे फिर बाद में कम्युनिकेशन हुए थे। तो कंबोडिया के विषय में जो वहाँ की जो मंदिर हैं जो बीच में डिसअपियर हो गए थे, उन लोगों के नॉलेज में नहीं थे, बाद में फिर जानकारी हुई, तो उसके विषय में थोड़ी सी जानकारी चाहूँगा आपसे कि उनके प्रिजर्वेशन के लिए क्या किया जा रहा है इस समय।
उसके बारे में तो मैं आपको बहुत नहीं बोल पाऊंगी, क्योंकि कंबोडिया ऐसी जगह है जहाँ पे मैं खुद नहीं गई हूँ। तो वहाँ पे क्या काम चल रहा है ये तो मुझे पता नहीं है, मगर डेफिनेटली अंकुर वाट ही यूनेस्को वर्ल्ड हेरिटेज साइट है। वहाँ पे IIT का भी काम चल रहा है प्रिजर्वेशन में, वो भी मदद कर रहे हैं। तो वहाँ पे आई थिंक बहुत सारे बॉडीज हैं जो काम कर रहे हैं टेम्पल्स को प्रोटेक्ट करने के लिए। बट दीज आर नॉट अंकुर वाट में पार्ट्स हैं जो लिविंग एस्पेक्ट्स हैं, जहाँ पे अभी भी लोग जाके वर्शिप करते हैं। बट दूसरे कौन सी टेम्पल्स है कंबोडिया में जहाँ पे प्रिजर्वेशन का काम चल रहा है, उसके बारे में मुझे बहुत जानकारी नहीं है। अगर FAO का फ्रेंच आर्कियोलॉजिस्ट का बहुत काम रह चुका है कंबोडिया में, तो शायद आई शुड डायरेक्ट यू टू सम ऑफ देयर पब्लिकेशंस, उसमें आपको ज़रूर जानकारी मिलेगी।
एक बात और इंडोनेशिया के विषय में मुझे कहना है। जैसे इंडियन सोसाइटी में हम देखते हैं मुस्लिम कम्युनिटी और ये में जो उनकी एक अलग आइडेंटिटी होती है, इंडोनेशिया में क्या देखा जाता है कि जो मुस्लिम के घरों में भी जाएंगी तो वहाँ रामायण के और महाभारत के भित्ति चित्र जो वॉल जो पेंटिंग्स हैं वो अवेलेबल हैं। तो उनके जो नेम्स भी जो हैं सो फेथ ओरिएंटेड, मतलब मुस्लिम के जो जैसे इंडिया में अरबिक और फारसी नेम्स उनका ओरिएंटेशन होता है, वैसा न होकर के लैंड ओरिएंटेड मतलब वहाँ की जो संस्कृति है वो ओरिएंटेड होते हैं। उसके बेस्ट एग्जांपल जो सुकर्णों के विषय में थोड़ा अपने बंधुओं को मैं बताऊं कि उनके पिता महाभारत के बहुत बड़े विद्वान थे, लेकिन कर्ण का कौरवों के पक्ष में उन्हें बड़ा कष्टदायक होता था, तो कर्ण को बहुत प्यार करते थे, उनका प्रिय कैरेक्टर था, तो उन्होंने अपने बेटे का नाम रखा सुकर्ण, मतलब अच्छा कर्ण, जो कि वर्चूज के साथ हो, है ना, धर्म युद्ध में वर्चूज के साथ। और जब इंडोनेशिया में जब मुसीबत आई, जब वहाँ वार शुरू हो गया और उनकी फैमिली जब मुसीबत में थी, जवाहरलाल नेहरू जी यहाँ प्राइम मिनिस्टर थे, तो उनके फैमिली को रेस्क्यू के लिए यहाँ से भेजा गया और उनको यहाँ पर लाया गया, उनको बचा करके। उसी समय सुकर्णों को एक पुत्री हुई और वो उस समय के जो यहाँ उड़ीसा के जो मुख्यमंत्री बाद में हुए और उसमें पायलट थे, तो उनके गोद में लाकर के पुत्री के नामकरण के लिए रखा गया कि आपने चूंकि इस पुत्री को बचाया है मुसीबत में, तो आप ही इसका बैप्टाइजमेंट नामकरण इसका करें। श्रावण भाद्र का महीना था, काफी मूसलाधार वर्षा हो रही थी, आकाश में मेघ छाए हुए थे, तो उन्होंने इसका नाम रखा मेघावती, सुकर्णोपुत्री, कितना यूनिक चीज है। तो ये हम माने जो लैंड ओरिएंटेड जो है नेम होना एक बहुत बड़ी बात है इंस्टीड ऑफ फेथ ओरिएंटेड, क्योंकि हम लोग यहाँ देखते हैं कि छोटी छोटी बातें कितनी कंट्रोवर्शियल हो जाती हैं। तो ये मैं कहना चाहता हूँ।
हाँ जरूर, इंडोनेशिया और मलेशिया में भी अभी भी आप देख सकते हैं कि परफॉर्मिंग आर्ट्स में बहुत ज़्यादा इन्फ्लुएंस है रामायण और महाभारत का। इंडिया और साउथ ईस्ट एशिया और एशियन रीजन्स में आप देखेंगे कुछ 300 वैरायटीज़ हैं रामायण के और महाभारत के कुछ 100 होंगे। तो हर एक को रामायण और महाभारत की जानकारी होती है और वो खाली वो इंडियन वर्जन्स नहीं है, वो खुद के वर्जन्स उन्होंने बनाए हैं और अलग हैं। उसमें उन्होंने कैरेक्टर्स भी इंट्रोड्यूस किए हैं और उन्होंने अपना बनाया है। तो वहाँ पे तो ताकत उसका बहुत ही ज़्यादा है। अभी भी आप शाडो पपेट्री देख सकते हैं, डांस फॉर्म्स देख सकते हैं, थिएटर देख सकते हैं, जो बहुत ही इंटरेस्टिंग है वहाँ पे।
इंडिया में भी जो उनकी टीम आती है रामायण के प्रदर्शन के लिए, तो बहुत देखेंगे कि मुस्लिम बहुत हैं, लेकिन कोई कृष्ण बना है, कोई राम बना है, कोई गणेश बना है, कोई ये बना है। तो ये बहुत ही हाँ ये बहुत अच्छा है। वो यही तो मैं बोला कि फेथ करना हो करके और लैंड ओरिएंटेड जो भूमि का जो सुगंध है उससे जुड़ाव, ये बहुत बड़ी बात है। बहुत आपको बधाई है मैडम।
Thank you, Ms. Nalina Gopal, for accepting the invitation, and thanks also goes to the audience for gracing this event with your presence. We have arranged for tea in the third floor foyer. Everyone is invited there. Thank you.